The evening had fallen softly over Dubai, the desert glowing under the tender light of dusk. Sheikh Hamdan, Fazza, stood at the balcony of his quiet room, his eyes lost in the horizon that stretched beyond the palace walls. His heart carried the weight of love and promise, bound together by words unspoken. "My older woman," he whispered into the silence, "don't worry, I will handle everything." It wasn't just a statement, it was a vow. A promise carved from the depths of his soul, where love was not measured by years but by devotion, by loyalty, by the kind of strength that only true hearts could understand. He had fallen for her not because she was perfect, but because she was real. Her wisdom, her calmness, her quiet grace, it all drew him in like poetry. The world might have seen her age, but Fazza saw eternity in her. The fine lines on her face weren't signs of time, they were stories, each one whispering of resilience, patience, and life well lived. When she smiled, it wasn't the smile of youth, it was the smile of peace, the kind of warmth that makes a man believe in forever. He knew she worried about how the world might see them, but he had already made up his mind. "Let them talk," he said softly. "I will handle the noise. You only have to love me," she had told him once, her eyes heavy with concern. "Hamdan, people will never understand. They will question you. They will mock me." He had taken her hand gently and smiled. "My love, they have always spoken, but never have they understood my heart. I am not here to please them, I am here to protect you." In that moment, she saw it in his eyes, the kind of love that didn't fade with pressure, the kind of man who didn't back away from storms. He wasn't loving her for the world to see, he was loving her for his soul to breathe. There were nights when she stayed quiet, afraid her insecurities might push him away. But Fazza was not a man who loved on the surface. He saw beyond her worries, beyond her doubts. He loved her for her strength, her honesty, and the way she cared for him in silence. To him, she was not older, she was wiser, gentler, and more precious. She had lived through pain and still chose to love again, and that courage made her extraordinary. "You've handled life alone for too long," he once said as he brushed his thumb across her cheek. "Now it's my turn to handle things for you." He wanted her to know that she didn't have to carry the weight anymore. The struggles, the fears, the sleepless nights, all of it, he was ready to shoulder. He wasn't offering her luxury or royal comfort, he was offering her peace. He would guard her heart as if it were his crown, because to him, she was more valuable than any throne. His words carried not just romance but responsibility. "When I say I love you, it means I'm ready to protect your heart from everything that ever tried to break it." Sometimes she would look at him with tears in her eyes and whisper, "Why me?" And he would answer softly, "Because my soul recognized you before my mind did. Because you are what peace feels like. Because you are the woman who makes my heart rest." He never cared that the world called her older. To him, she was timeless. Love, in his eyes, had no expiration, no rule, no limit. He was drawn not to her youth, but to her depth, to the quiet beauty of a woman who had learned how to survive without losing her softness. Fazza knew that love like theirs required strength, the kind that faced whispers, judgment, and misunderstanding. But he was not afraid. He had faced storms fiercer than words, and this time, he was fighting for something worth every scar. "Let them speak," he said one evening as they watched the sunset together. "Let them question. My silence will answer for me, you don't have to fight this battle. I will handle everything." She smiled faintly, her heart trembling with both fear and faith. His poems began to change. They were no longer just verses of admiration, they were declarations of protection.
As days passed, Fazza began turning his pain into purpose. He started sharing poems that carried hidden pieces of her, verses that spoke of regret, forgiveness, and undying affection. People saw beauty in his words, but few knew the sorrow behind them. Each poem was an apology disguised as art, a message meant for one heart only. I never wanted to hurt you, but maybe through these poems, I can heal what my silence broke, he thought. Poetry became his redemption, the only bridge between what was lost and what still lived within him. He often dreamed of her returning, not as a lover, but as a friend who could look at him without pain. In those dreams, she smiled, and all was forgiven. He would tell her how deeply he missed her laughter, how his soul still recognized her in every sunrise. But when he woke, the room was empty, and reality reminded him that some goodbyes echo forever. I never wanted to hurt you, he whispered to the dawn, but maybe I had to lose you to learn how fragile love truly is. His tears were not of weakness, they were proof of love that still existed, quietly but eternally. Fazza began finding beauty again, not in perfection, but in pain. He realized that love's deepest form is not possession, but remembrance. So, he kept her alive in his poetry, in his heart, in the pauses between his breaths. Each poem was a flower laid upon the grave of their story, sad, but beautiful. He no longer sought her return, he only wished for her peace. He had hurt her, yes, but he had also loved her in the purest way he knew how, and perfectly, endlessly. I never wanted to hurt you, he wrote in his final poem of the night, but I will spend the rest of my life honoring the love that made me human. And as he finished writing, the wind blew gently through the open window, carrying his final verse into the night. Somewhere, perhaps far away, she might feel a tug in her heart, as if the universe whispered his apology on his behalf. Fazza closed his eyes, his soul lighter now, knowing that even if she never read his words, the truth remained eternal. Love had hurt, yes, but it had also taught, healed, and transformed. In the silence of his room, he smiled faintly and whispered one last time, I never wanted to hurt you, but you will forever remain the poem I could never finish. The world continued to move around them, full of opinions, judgments, and noise, but Fazza and his beloved existed in their own quiet universe. He didn't need to prove his love, his actions spoke with the gentleness of a man who had already chosen his forever. Every time he looked at her, he saw more than a woman, he saw the reason his heart beat softer, his words grew deeper, and his soul found peace. He admired her not for her youth, but for her depth, for the way she had faced life's storms and still had love left to give. To him, she was not a chapter, she was the entire story written in truth, courage, and grace. One night, as the moonlight spilled across the dunes, he held her hand and whispered, You've taught me that love is not about age, but about connection. You've shown me what loyalty feels like, what peace truly means. You've given me something the world could never give, a love that doesn't fade, even when everything else changes. And as she smiled through her tears, Fazza knew his words would live forever, not as poetry, but as proof that when a man truly loves, he doesn't promise the world,